Hey guys, what's going on? This is a video request from Double Happiness Cover. He asked me to go into specifics on how I EQ my bass for my covers. I know I made another video about how I set up my bass and what plugins I use and whatnot. So if you want to see like the plugins that I'm using and me talk about them, just go check out that video. This video is going to be specifically me talking about the EQing on the specific VST that I use, and I'm going to show you guys a little bit of the more in-depth mastering EQing that I do for my bass. So I'm just going to pull up this project that I was working on this weekend. It's a Blink cover, and you guys will probably see it maybe later today or tomorrow or whatever, within this week, so you'll be able to hear how the bass sounds. I'm not going to play it for you, but you guys will be able to hear what I did with the bass. All right. Okay. So here's the bass track, and I'm not gonna play it because I don't have my pod plugged in, so I don't want to go through all the trouble of plugging in, but I'm just going to show you guys the EQ options I have in here. Okay, this is the Ampeg SVX VST that I use. I talked about in the last video. It's a really good VST, so this is what I use basically for all my bass covers now. This is the classic Ampeg head. I have this is usually the one I use. I sometimes use the other one, like I think I'll sometimes use the Pro, but for the most part I do use the classic head. This is the same head that Mark Hoppus uses, and I'll show you guys this one, then I'll go to the cab and I'll show you guys what I do with the cab. But basically the master knob is it's flat. It's just the volume is at 5. I don't want to make it too. You could boost it if you want a little bit, but what I do is I end up recording it like this, because boosting the volume does change the sound of the bass a little bit. So I end up doing it like this, and then I boost the gain a little bit, in Cubase, and it gives it more of like a blinky sound because it's higher, and it just sounds more like Blink when I do that. So I prefer to do that. But if you want, you can tweak the master knob to make it higher here. Here's the treble knob. Common to popular belief, you don't blast the treble when you're doing Blink. You put it around 6, 7 maybe max. Sometimes I'll turn it up a little bit, but usually it's around there. That's usually where the treble knob stays. I don't mess with it. I don't put it any higher than that. Oops. For the frequency knob, you can put it around 3 or 4. I keep it at 3 because especially since I'm using for this cover, I use my jazz bass, and it's kind of it's not as, it doesn't have that same punch as the P bass. So for those people who play both jazz basses and P bass, you know what I'm talking about. So I usually keep it on 3 for that, but sometimes when I use my P bass, I do put the frequency to 4. Here for the mid range, also common to popular belief, you do not cut back on the mid range when you're doing Blink, unless you're using a head that isolates both the high mids and the low mids. Then you can cut back on the low mids and turn the high mids up a little bit, because like my actual amp that I have in like my physical amp in my house, it does isolate high mids and low mids, so I do turn back the low mids on that, but I keep the high mids high. But for this amp, you want to keep the high mids relatively, like you don't want to blast them because it's gonna give you a muddy sound. But turn it up a little bit. It adds that punch to the bass. It makes a really nice sound. And for the bass knob, I typically turn it back a little bit, not too much, because then it takes away the place of the bass in the mix is the low end, so you don't want to take too much away from it, or else it's not going to sound like a bass. It's not going to come out in the track. You're not going to be able to hear it. And here you have the ultra high, ultra low. I keep the ultra high on. You actually don't need to if you don't want to. Depends on how your bass is set up. If your bass is not set up correctly, and your frets rattle a lot, you do not want the ultra high on, because that'll make your bass sound terrible. So if you want to use this, make sure your bass is set up correctly, make sure you have good strings, make sure make sure your bass is in order and it's not gonna give you this nasty rattly sound. But I like it, especially for the Blink tracks. It brings out the higher strings and whatnot. It's nice for especially for my P bass, because on the jazz bass the higher end is already brought out, because it's not as low end and punchy as a P bass. But I use it on both, so that's what I do for that. And then the gain is I just bump up the gain a little bit. It's at 6. So yeah, that's what I do for the head. And now for the cab. This is the SVT 410H, as you can see right here. This is not the cab that Mark Hoppus uses. The cab he uses would be the SVT 810E. And I also do use this one, especially with my P bass. I really like this amp, actually. It's really tight. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's like a really nice tight bass. But it is like lower, sounds a little bit lower than the other one, than this cab. So for this cover, I decided to use this one. I keep the grill on. I don't see any point of taking it off. And then I use the Condenser 87 mic. Besides this one, I also sometimes use the Condenser 414 and the Vintage Dynamic 20. I like this one for AVA covers, not so much for Blink. But I like using this with my jazz bass for AVA covers. But for the most part, I use the Condenser 87. Yeah, and I don't mess with the ambience at all. I just leave it off. I keep it on near and on axis. And yeah, it's pretty much it for the cab. Studio EQ. This I just added in for just to maximize the tone and the sound I want to get from my bass, and the different like where I want to boost my bass and where I want to cut it. So I'm just gonna show you guys this is like really basic EQing. I didn't do anything fancy to it. So basically what I did here is this portion right here that's cut. These are the frequencies under 32 hertz where the human ear can't pick up sounds under 32 hertz. So especially in a mix, you're not going to hear anything under 32 hertz. So I cut this so it doesn't take up space in the mix. It frees up more room for the rest of the bass, because even though you can't hear it, it's still there, it's still in the mix, it still takes up space. So I cut that frequency. And then here's the lower mid frequencies. I boost these a little bit. It gives the bass a nice low end. It's a nice punch. You don't want to boost it too much, or else it'll get overwhelming and it'll cover up your guitars and everything. So you boost that. I boost that a little bit. And then right here, this portion, this frequency is I don't know exactly how to explain it, but you have to hear it to know what I'm talking about. If you boost this, if you boost like this area right here, and just to listen to what it does to your bass, it gives your bass this kind of boxy feel. Like, I'm not exactly sure how to explain it, but it does not sound good. So I cut it a little bit. You don't want to cut it too much, or else it takes away kind of from the high end of the high mids of your bass that you did in that you set up with the when you EQ'd your actual head. But you want to cut it a little bit just so you don't get that weird boxy kind of sound that you get. It happens with a lot of low end like instruments with your bass, with your like kick drum, stuff like that. You want to kind of cut that a little bit just so you don't get that boxy feel. And if you're ever EQing your bass, just turn that, boost that section of your bass of your EQ and listen to what it does to your bass. It doesn't sound good. So that's why I do that. Some people also like to add another point up here, and they like to boost a little bit of the highs for clarity. I don't do that typically, but if you want to try that and see how it sounds, it's up to you. And this last thing is a reverb. You can't see it right now because my pod's not plugged in and I don't feel like setting everything up right now, so I'm just gonna tell you guys how I have it. It's the mix, I believe it's like around 35%. The decay is at 40, and the tone is at like I think is like 40 also. So yeah, it's just a little bit of the type of reverb is I think it's medium hall. That's a reverb I'm using. And just keep it on low. You know, I keep it. I don't put too much of it. Actually, it might be 35% in the mix, just so it doesn't muddy up the track. So yeah, that's pretty much how I EQ my bass. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys want to hear how this bass and this actual song sounds, just watch my cover. It'll be up real soon. So you guys just check out my channel, watch my cover. You'll get to see how the bass sounds. And I hope this video was helpful. If you guys have any more, if you guys want any more videos like this about specifics on how I EQ my stuff, record my stuff, just PM me or leave it in the comments, and I'll get back to you guys as soon as I can. I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.